Hello, everybody. This is the third episode of the Lost Under Heaven podcast, Love Unites Humanity. I'm here with Ebony.
Hello.
We're sat on our couch in our house. It is Thursday, the 8th of June.
It's a beautiful sunny day here where we live.
A little town of Ramsbottom. And it is just about a week since we released our new record, Something Is Announced by Your Life, which we casually have posed upon us next to Woody, our guru. And we thought we would have a relaxed, casual conversation about the record, the creation of the record, the experience of releasing it independently. We reached out to patrons and people on social media if they had any questions they wanted to share, and
we have a whole list of a variety of very interesting questions. So I think this is going to be a very full and rich episode.
Indeed. So I'll start by asking you the first question then. A week has passed since the album has been released. How are you feeling?
How am I feeling? Today I am feeling very calm today, but I must say the whole week had a whole platter of different feelings and emotions and experiences. But in general, I am feeling very grateful and happy, and I'm really proud of the work we created. I've got a very strong connection to this whole record and the process and the journey. It's like if I reflect back on the last 6 months where we focused on putting the record out, I feel I've been on some sort of roller coaster of different experiences, and each month and each song as a single had its different flavors so far. So yeah, I think I'm still in the moment of processing it all, but there's also a kind of like a new excitement and clarity coming up for me personally on how to take it all forward.
To keep on moving.
Yes.
Forwards.
How are you feeling after a week?
Well, so people who've been following what we've been sharing for the past few months, I hope will have got the grasp of the story of us releasing it independently, self-funding it with the support of our patrons and our own kind of crypto hustle to make ends meet. So we've been completely self-reliant in the process. Over the course of the past year, 18 months, we tried building a bit more of a team, making more connections, and just like fleshing it out in terms of a label, different roles. But for whatever reason, and perhaps we'll get into different reasons, I don't know, it just feels like the course of life in its way. Nothing ever felt right. None of the connections felt the right thing for us, and it took us to a point where we have been doing every role,
every aspect,
wearing every hat, which has been quite a lot of work. And for me, I felt a lot of anxieties coming up. But I think it's this dual thing of really believing in the work, really trusting the experience of creating it and the kind of realizations on that it brought, and wanting to give it its best shot in the world. I don't know, it's like your kid. You want it to go out in the world and have its best chance of getting I don't know what you'd say, getting noticed or getting taken by people. So with that, there's been a certain level of frustration that we both have experienced. But then it's an interesting thing to navigate that frustration, because it's like you want to be acknowledged, you want to be seen for what you're doing, you want to be just the work to be engaged with the level of intent that you put into it. But I know the nature of this world we live in these days, with the amount of how do you say that?
Well, there's just a lot of stuff out in the world that's asks for attention, right?
Yes,
so
the attention
especially
economy.
on social media and the amount of work that's out there and people trying to push it. So you have to also ask yourself, well, how do I want to approach it in a way that feels more to my heart and holistically?
Yeah,
That's how I've experienced that aspect.
And I mean, within that, we've been quite headstrong, and though I've been experiencing certain amounts of anxiety, quite, I don't know, fearless in our approach of we're just going to do it in the way that feels true to us. And on the back of that, I trust that the people on this planet at this time who need to hear the record will eventually hear it. It will reach the people that need to hear it.
There's some certain, like, sometimes timing just works unexpectedly. I think we watched an interesting film recently about just in short about the work of Hilma F. Klint, and she created all this amazing work, but she had a feeling it was going to serve its purpose at a later time, and she came to peace with that. And also just, again, there's a surrender happening, right?
Yes, surrender and just accepting where we are in this moment. And I think when I create work, I think we share this. It maybe sounds a little grandiose to say, but I have at least the aspiration to make true art, and with that it has a sense of timelessness, that it speaks to the eternal human condition. It isn't engaged with the zeitgeist of contemporary, which I feel so much of the culture you see coming by now is just either very derivative and retro, or just very, very like transient in its engagement with the flavor of the month,
Trends.
the trending. So I feel like we're kind of out of time in that way. We're on our own clock, and also, you know, we didn't use any traditional PR. We approached everybody personally, directly.
And we wanted to do that for a reason, because there's, I don't know, also just to build personal connections. And previously, other people were doing this kind of work for us, and I think it's just asking yourself, okay, well, is there any other way possible? And by seeing there are so many creators out there that are able to build an audience without the use of like PR companies. And it's not that I'm against the ideas of using a company like that or working with people, but I wanted to approach it differently to see what would happen and what's coming up.
I think there was a big part of that, which, you know, again is like maybe slightly reckless or something, but I was just kind of intrigued what would happen. And, you know, you live with the consequences of your choices in life. But I think also it's that sense of having a middleman or woman who is representing your work. And we've always felt that those that have represented our work for us don't really communicate what we feel our work is about. So we figured, who better than us? I think one thing that we've both desired to do, and I feel, you know, this doing the podcast and more with a video and putting ourselves out there more just as we are communicating the way we see and the way we feel. We haven't ever really done in the past. I've always been very kind of reclusively introverted and kind of suspicious, could I say, of putting myself out there.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm just trying to get over that, you know, speaking.
It is again it's an internal thing. There's no one stopping you but yourself, and I learned that from experience, and especially again because we hadn't been in this releasing of an album period for quite a few years, so we came back to that with new ideas, but then also finding ourselves approaching it from certain old ways, but then feeling that wasn't really aligned with certain values we hold. So it's constantly kind of like, oh wait, am I expressing myself from the place I want to express from, or where I have to shape something into something to like be able to push it?
And also in that sense of you don't know what comes up until it comes up.
Yes, and that's why I think that's really beautiful. And all you can do is be present with it. And I think if you said, oh, what's the main lesson you've taken from the last few months? I would say just approach every day, step by step, and be present with everything you do. Be fully immersed. May it be this podcast episode, I am right here now talking with you, and I'm here. I'm not thinking about anything else. Or is it about like, okay, I'm gonna put this song out, and that's the full attention it's going to get.
And that for me, the trouble is, or the struggle is always, and I mean it's the modern social media age, is like making value judgments about yourself based on the way it is received and perceived by others, rather than when I'm in that moment, present with it, listening. This is the one record that we've made that I've probably listened to the most, not just because I produced it, but after it's finished, keep going back to it. And I genuinely, like, there's very few things that I would do differently with the record. And it just it energizes me. It puts me in that kind of flow state of feeling like a sense of purpose and a sense of aliveness. So going back to it over this past 18 months of trying to make things happen and snakes and ladders kind of moving backwards and forwards, it's always just that reminder of actually like, no, there's something genuine here that I care about and I want to pursue.
Because when did we start the kind of like, when did you start writing and then going into the recording? It's probably interesting to give like a sense of a timeline and what.
Yeah. I was just checking our questions, but I feel like this conversation just flows.
Yeah, it
regardless of question 2. Sorry, what am I saying? When did we start? I feel like the process of making this record started in the inspiration for it beginning in 2019, the end of 2019, midst of 2019. But the actual recording of it wasn't until the autumn of 2020, around about something like that. So I placed the inspiration in a few kind of pivotal moments that happened in 2019 following the touring and release of our second record. I mean, I can talk about them. I don't know if you have anything you want to.
Well, I think that year was for both of us a very transformational year on like many levels.
Yeah. I'm just thinking where to start with it, because I think my starting place at least was the real feeling of disillusionment and burnout post releasing Love Hates What You've Become in that whole period. My kind of worldview being very characterized by rhetoric that I was sort of assimilating from Extinction Rebellion, stuff that I was engaging with, and books like The Inhabitable Earth.
You were a bit of a black pill doomer. We both carry that quality. But that's just, when you...
Particularly in that moment, I think it was a sense of... I'd say just a real sense that the world was going kind of in a catastrophic direction, and a feeling of complete hopelessness, powerlessness, and I don't know, like the feeling that you just didn't, you'd gone past caring so much that it almost came into a misanthropy towards people, humanity. But in the midst of that, the one thing was, discovering this Alice Coltrane record, the lineage of it that I follow is discovering this Alice Coltrane record of what we found to be kirtan, and then remembering that my dad's old friend Peter Barrett sung kirtan, connecting with him. And for me, there was a surrender. And I had this memory, actually. The first session we went to with Pete, he ended it by playing his song, which I can't pronounce the actual title, Ishwari Panda, of I Surrender and Trust the Universe. So Pete Barrett is a songwriter.
Yogi.
A songwriter, a yogi. Bhaktananda is his name. He wrote this song, and the chorus of it goes, I surrender and trust the universe will give me what I need. I surrender. And I remember him playing it after we did this kirtan session, and I was sort of stood on the outside of the circle, and everyone's
dancing,
stood
like
up
he
and
asks you to dance.
And I was just like, oh my God, this hippie shit is making me so uncomfortable. Like I remember just feeling in my body that sense of like, judgment, cringe, like, well, what are people, imagine if some, my cool friends saw me right now. And then at a certain moment, I was just like, fuck it, I'll just embrace the dance, and, took a little spin around the room and had a laugh. And though it is quite a simple moment, in a certain way, there was just a tiny little bit of surrender in that moment, of just letting go of that whole construct.
It's a shift as well, because you shift from being up in the mind more into the body. Like, instead of kind of like navigating everything from thought, you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and see how it makes me feel. And the body loves to move.
And so from there, we embraced kind of things that Peter Barrett was offering and teaching. I know I did particularly. So that was the chanting of mantra and making a practice of that.
I think it was also a very beautiful experience of just singing in group. Carries a certain energy, and also just to merge with all the voices and energy. I really enjoyed it, and just being open and listening and just showing up with an open heart.
I mean, that's a good point, in the sense of within my burnout of creativity. In a way, I had really lost. I hated being on the stage and just that whole dynamic of playing in the rock band, and it just like it all felt really false and kind of constructed. The stage, the singer, blah blah. So the circle of singing in kirtan, and though somebody leads it, it's like call and response, and it's not really about any individual. It's not even about your own voice. It's just like becoming part of something. More the group dynamic. So from there, that led us to going to Portugal to be with Pete for a week-long retreat in October. For this is for me, it's been a very important part of the story, and so one that I've considered not talking about, but I just wanted to mention it today in that chronology of creating the record. So essentially, after having a 7-day very beautiful experience with this group of people, a lot of very, very opening and
just deep work,
deep kind of heart sense. We went to the beach, and two of our group, very beautiful couple, Danny and Kim, got caught in a riptide and dragged out into the ocean and died. And it was devastating, really. It was
well, I think it just left a very big mark. It was both because everyone was present there, and you go through quite like you just get shocked in a moment, and you're also so present, but it lingers on with you. So there was a big period of grief present for us, already on top of personal transformational processes. And then you carry the grief. And then a few months after...
Well, can I just
Yeah,
speak
yeah,
about
yeah.
that a bit before going into the months after? Just I want to say, and it's something that, again, that I've sort of have an impulse to talk about, and at the same time a real reservation from talking about, but essentially it really mirrored back to me this near-death experience that I had when I was 14, apart from in this moment I was on the beach looking out hopelessly to the sea, whereas that was my mom and my dad when I was caught in a riptide in the sea and essentially drowned and then saved. And it had this kind of surreal moment, like within the context, and also to hold that grief with a lot of the members of the group were also kind of mothers and grandmothers, and there was a very strong kind of feminine energy there, and this sense of just, well, yeah, without going too deep into it in this moment, it was very, very profoundly changing for me. Like it felt like it unhooked something inside me, which essentially was a depressive feeling that I had held throughout my 20s. And it was in the face of death, life just seemed such a beautiful gift and miracle, you know, that my doom or black pill attitude just suddenly felt so, I don't know how you say, just so childish, so immature, so disconnected from kind of the experience of life. It was like an intellectual problem. It wasn't real. So that left us quite shaken at the end of 2019. And our first response to that was creating Love Unites Humanity, the manifesto that we then released in the January of that year, which, I mean, it speaks for itself. It's still out there, but it kind of sums up that moment, the feeling of that moment of coming out of a certain sense of realism of the context, planetary context, of just informed by, circumstance, but the real desire to live in the face of it all. And then 2020 unfolded, as we all know. 2020
made us all stop in everything that we did, which I found I was very great in a way. I was very kind of like grateful for that, because I just didn't want to repeat another cycle of the things we've already had been doing. And so with the music, so I really appreciated just like a breather moment, and almost to really ask myself those questions around, well, what is it that you value around the creativity? How do you want to move forward? What have you enjoyed? What do you not enjoy? And I really felt I had a moment there to come back to myself and just pause for a minute and say, okay, there were a lot of intentions there, but they've got lost along the process. How can we come back more to what we really care about and how we want to express ourselves and see ourselves? And it's also marked the start of our Patreon community.
Yeah, so I just say I didn't really have any sense of making another album in 2020.
No.
Like we'd stopped working with Mute, and we had this idea of the creative studio that we wanted to develop and move much more into filmmaking. And we had this video series that we had written a whole kind of episode series plan for. But the moment of the pandemic kind of put that video series sort of in the fridge in a certain way, stopped it from happening. And we started the Patreon community. And my main memory of that early period, kind of March, April, May, was setting up just on this the space in front of us.
Yeah, we just had the instruments out and just kind of like jammed and played around and improvised and just kind of like went with the flow and see what came out of that.
Yeah, which was the first time in a way that we've ever really done that. In the past, our records have been made, the past two records, first two records, sorry, with me essentially writing the whole song, producing it on Ableton to a certain point, and when I feel like it's there, offering it to you, I'd have pointers, ideas for you, but you'd then bring your own approach to it, and it would develop a bit more, and then we essentially, with the first two records, worked with producers who then took the rough visions of songs that I had made and the kind of the sound palette, the direction of them, and finished them off, cleaned them up, finalized it into albums. So there was never a very organic back and forth of us playing music together.
No, I think our approach to it has always been more from like what you said, like you would produce it. You'd be more like a producer.
Yeah. Which when I reflect back on it, I'm like, why? Why didn't we play together more? I think that was mostly through my own kind of perfectionist, pedantic sense of like, this is how it should be. Whereas just playing together, I think most of the time we just were making drones and singing little kind of abstract things.
Yes, and working with like little loops and just vocalizing over it and to see what would come out of that. It's like, I remember it was with the song Lullaby, and I think we just like, it was in the evening and we played for like an hour or two, and that was just like a little snippet within that jam, and we're like, this is a little pearl, let's work on that, and then that whole song kind of like unfolded out of that. And I really like that way of working. That's naturally more my approach to things, and I think it's more when you leave like time and space open for something to allow itself to unfold instead of trying to put it into form in an instant. I like that kind of like, I don't know what's gonna come out, but something is gonna come out very unexpectedly.
Something's gonna come out. It makes me think of the title when you said that something is announced. Is that sense of an emergence that you're not really kind of consciously aware of. If you try and force it, it doesn't appear. It's just you have to give space and time and allow what comes to come. And obviously there's some sculpting and craft in the process once you have those moments. But doing that also just opened up space so songs like Get Spooky was a really old song that I just carried around for like a decade more. I started writing it when I was 17. I think there's a demo out there somewhere. But this kind of creative flow that we began, I remember just going and sitting by the river on most days. There was that beautiful weather, and just going through old notebooks and writing lyrics and just allowing, again, without any real purpose or like vision of what it was going to be, just allowing. So we had saved up money through the Patreon, and we decided to start booking into the studio Pinhole Studios with Adam Gorman in Ancoats, and we started just working on a song at a time, really.
Yeah, and I think also the fun thing with this record is like fully crafted and created within like Manchester as well. I think the first one to fully be within that kind of like our home base now, and working with local other artists.
Yeah, other than Gam down in London,
string player
who did the cellos and string arrangements with Harry Fosen Smith. I was just wanted to look back on questions, because we started talking about that, some insights in the creative process behind the album. How did you approach writing and recording the songs? I'd say also, so initially we had like 3 or 4 songs, and we thought, we'll make an EP. and we'll put that out in
Yes.
2021.
Yeah.
And then our friend Lily P, Liverpool Pete, I remember we took a walk with him on the beach on that really beautiful day, and he said, why make an EP? It'll cost you the same amount to make an album, or, you know, like in the sense of putting it out, releasing it.
Yes.
And just like, yeah, why bother with an EP? So we were like, that's a good point. But for me, an album's always a bit like, you know, it's like a book. It's like, it has to be a coherent body of work. And I don't know, I still have maybe an old-fashioned attachment. I know you are doubtful of this.
But I think, though, it's true with those, like the 3 records we've created. They are like little books. But I think in our way moving forward, like, can we move out of the idea of the album? And I mean, there's a lot to play with, but I agree with you on that.
Well, I mean, it's like, for better or for worse, I just have that sense of gravitas around an album that it's got to be a, I don't know, I don't like that word, a statement, but it has to have a purpose.
I think it's
Otherwise,
often also just like it captures a moment in time, a moment that you lived through, and that then gets translated into song and music and songwriting. Because I love looking back at all these records, and I can really just see even the kind of like symbolism and archetypical energies that present themselves, and where we found ourselves in our own personal process. And just, it's quite wonderful to see that. I think we have a nice question in relation to that as well, which is this, like, okay, something is announced by your life. How do you feel that album differs from like the previous 2 records in a way? Are there different elements and ideas there?
I mean, I feel it's fundamentally different, almost to the point where I feel like it's a different, we still put it under the name of Lost Under Heaven, and there's an evolution of that because it's still me and you creating it together. But it sounds very different. I sing very differently.
Yes, that's right. I think also it has a lot more uplifting and softened energy around in this whole record.
Yeah, which is interesting because I said that to some people, and they also are like, well, when you think about certain songs of ours, when I think of Lost Under Heaven, I always think of like Sorrow and like Savage Messiah, and basically all the like, when I think of the old Lost Under Heaven, I think of much more of the antagonistic, kind of dystopian aggressiveness that was very present for us in our early years of creating together, and just our general outlook on life. It was sort of like us against the world. The world's going up in flames and we're running away from it. Whereas this record and several experiences around the creation of it is like the feeling of no longer wanting to change the world or run away from the world, but belong more wholly to it. A real sense of connection and relationship with creation in all its many forms and kingdoms. I don't know, not just like humanity, but it's just like a real alive sense of being.
You choose to actively engage with all that presents itself in life, instead of being a passive observer, or just kind of like letting yourself be swung around by everything. You can approach this way of living from a more centered way of being, and feeling and experiencing the richness of what it has to offer. And maybe another quality I like to pick up on, and it's a question to you that just popped into my mind. I would say this record more so also has a very storytelling quality to it, because I feel each song to their own is a little, there's a story unfolding, and some even more than others have almost that kind of like a myth quality to it.
Yeah. happy you pick up on that. For me, I've always had that interest in storytelling, and I know that having been with me all these years, there's like the silent desire to be a storyteller in a more pronounced way. But I'm yet to really embark on that journey other than through song. And for me, a song is always a little bit more abstract. It's more like an atmosphere. It's more like fragments and poetic kind of gestures towards a story, rather than like, though I really love, kind of say like a Johnny Cash country style song that has like this and then this and then this, like a series of events.
Yeah.
But all that said, working on this record, I discovered the work of Martin Shaw in 2019 as well, I think, through the Dark Mountain project, and just become really inspired by oral storytelling and wanting to weave that sort of mythos understanding of, telling a deeper truth through story. So I don't know, that's a general sort of answer. It's something that I feel I'm more drawn to. And actually, I was really impressed by the album that my dear friend Tom McClung made, that was just like straight up stories. And I was a tiny bit like envious when he shared it with me, because I was like, man, that's what I've been trying to do. But he's just like done it in a more, and his songs are on that record. They've got a beautiful sort of, how do you say, it's like a realism, or just like, I don't mean this in a rude way, but a mundanity. It's just like a very like simple, like love. Whereas the stories I'm always drawn to are much more kind of mystical and strange and almost like fantastical in a way. But that said, all the stories there, I like having the record here to gesture towards. Like Get Spooky is really is like me telling a very personal story. Certain like events and highlights in the song are very kind of documenting moments in my life. So.
Yes. And then Winter's Truth, it's that's told from like.
Can we?
The question. We can do that. Let's do it like that.
Just because Matthew sent through a question that I
number 10.
I like.
No, 10.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask it for you. Does the song Winter's Truth on the album stand out to you as something resembling a fictional novel written from a distinct perspective, different from other songs? Personally, I found it reminiscent of an old Elizabethan haunted mansion and a love story involving a tormented vampire or something similar. It seemed to present a contrasting writing style to the other songs. Is this intentional on your part as well? Or am I misrepresenting it? Perhaps it holds more autobiographical elements or conveys a statement. Can you share details about the song Winter's Truth? This was from Thierry. But specifically, how did you come up with the lyrics, and what inspired you to use strings to create a somber chamber music ambience? One thing I would just want to say before you answer is, one thing I really like is that has been the favorite song of quite a few people.
I mean, when I heard it, when you played it to me and asked to do some vocals to just freestyle on it at certain parts, it was my favorite song as well, because it has a strange quality to it, which I really love. And even within doing the vocals at the end part of the song, it activated something within me. It activated a certain energy, and I really felt it in my whole being and body. Like that expression came from a whole different place.
That just makes me think something Martin Shaw says about myth is it comes from bone memory,
yes,
rather than flesh memory of
they
like
live
the
within
fact.
us.
Yeah, the myths are all alive in us, and they sort of have a autonomous life of their own that arises through us. Shall I say a little bit about the
go on
writing of it maybe?
Yeah.
So the song started with the piano part. Do, 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 do. And I remember just playing this on the piano, and having the kind of initial instant thought of being like, this is like Beauty and the Beast soundtrack or something. Like it's always a little game that goes through my head whenever I basically write something that is good. Is like, where am I ripping this off from? And then I spend a few days trying to work out where I've stolen it from. And once I've
cleared it,
proven to myself that I haven't stolen it, I then move forwards with it. So just in its own way, the instant things that made me think of was kind of a fantasy, kind of a romantic fantasy, but in that kind of sort of, like a dark gothic fantasy. I don't know what you'd say.
Can you remember how we got to the point of adding strings to it? Because I'm trying to memorize.
Yeah, well, I think
at what point that happened and what.
It was just as we recorded it, worked on it. So from there, we kind of the guitar and the different. I remember Ben doing the drums and just having this. The more we worked on it, the more it just felt like it should be more reserved and tight. And I think also at the time we had watched like Anna Karenina, and some other things.
And something else. Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, okay.
It was funny. Once the song was finished and we had been watching this series.
No, we were, to put some context.
Okay.
Because we don't just casually watch these series. We were at your parents' and it was Christmas. And we had sort of half worked on the song in the studio before Christmas. Then we'd gone to the Netherlands. We were with your parents. And as you do at Christmas, we needed something to watch on TV. And this new series, Bridgerton, on Netflix was there. And
guilty pleasure.
Yeah, right. Guilty pleasure. But there's something about that era. I know it's a complete, made up story, but that era. I feel I have a
past life there.
Don't we all? Along with being the Queen of Sheba and Tutankhamun. But yeah, just like how uptight everything was, and how underneath that uptight there was such like erotic desire that's so pent up and buttoned up, and just the outfits that they wear and the dance scenes. So it was actually after watching that, and then I remember one particular dance scene, and then we were working on it and the song after, and we had started developing the conversation with Gam, and I was just like, let's make this song like really like baroque, like very string quartet, and I sent him some references, and then he just came back with these ideas, and we were like, wow, yeah, let's push it in this direction. And then that whole post-rock end section just kind of happened sort of by accident. Like we finished the song and then just carried on playing when I was just like playing guitar and I think you were singing or something. Yeah. And from there it just grew, this whole end section. And it became this weird Bridgerton post-rock. Epic. That's the marketing. Yeah, we're gonna put it out as a single at one point. We should do. Yeah. Because maybe it's the one that people will love. And then lyrically, I don't want to talk about it too much because I like it to simmer in the mystery. Yeah. But I'd say that there is that sense of, well, even just that line that's towards the end, what is lost in lust. And I would say though it's a story that's kind of fantastical and a sort of archetypical king, queen, so on and so forth, it's essentially about an unfaithful king. And it's not based on any particular sort of narrative from our own lives, but it's more in that sort of, modern dream narrative. Well, basically about how we live in this super eroticized, trashy, sensualized, like pornography. Seductions through the screen. Yeah, right. Like energy harvesting. And what is lost in lust is like, it's so given. People are giving away their sexual energy all the time without really considering what their life energy, what they're selling off cheaply. So there is another question in relation to song Get Spooky, and that's to do with a certain line. And if you can provide any further insight into the line, early one curb stomp morning. Yeah, you always say it like a hillbilly.
What is the meaning
Well, when
behind
this question was sent over,
because it's yeah.
do you know? You don't know.
I
I've
have
never
my own
said.
interpretations, but I do not know your perspective, so I'm equally as
Well,
interested
I'll
to
tell
hear.
you where it comes from, but I realized it's actually really dark.
I had a feeling it would be.
So curb stomp is like an incredibly violent way to kill someone. And I remember finding out about it or hearing it in, I don't even want to talk about it because it's so like vilely, disgustingly violent. But American History X, that film with Edward Norton, and he kills a guy. It's basically you stamp on someone's head with their jaw on a curb and it splits them in two. And it's when I realized like, shit, that's where that lyric comes from. That's like, I was trying to paint a scene of like the inner anguish, inner torment I was feeling, and also playing upon this repeated imagery of like being divided, being at war in my foolish head. But then I realized when I was thinking about it, I sing it so just like kind of like dreamily and softly that it's such a violent image to sing in such a soft way. So I don't know, it troubled me a little bit when I realized what it was communicating, but it was also accurate to how I felt in that moment.
And I wanted to say this is perhaps the beauty of what poetry tends to capture. It, as you said, really wonderful. I try to paint this image. You're painting scenes and images with the words and sounds, and even that being such like a violent kind of like idea, but by you singing it in a very gentle way and the poetic approach, it takes that harshness off of it. And I think that's like poetry can evoke that quality of presenting those feelings presented in such a way that you really, I understand how you must feel or what you go through. And then also for a lot of people, they don't have an idea what the words mean, and they might go on a
it takes them some. Well, I just thought it was quite a strange, like curb stomp. I mean, a more gentle way of thinking about it. Also, that I was like imagining kind of walking down the street at sunrise in a sort of heady frustration and just like stamping and kicking. You know, like sometimes people walk past our house and kick our bin over, and you're like, what's going on with you today, man? I
thought it was just like you being like in one of the kind of like sad mornings, but just kind of like sitting alone by yourself on a curb.
Well, but this is the interesting thing, right? Because that would be the outer image, but my internal image, and I don't know, I think everyone has a certain level of self-critic, but I've come to realize, like working with John, my mentor, and things like this, like I have a habitual kind of quite dark self-critic, quite nasty, like stuff that I would never say to another person, I say to myself. Anyway, let's not stumble down that rabbit hole.
Let's have a look.
So the first song on the album you wrote, they all sort of started appearing, but there's a little story of Dark Days that I shared with the that German radio station that I remembered.
Oh yeah, tell.
Well, just that actually the guitar riff I wrote on Halloween in Seattle in 2018, I remember.
Yes.
Just like playing, and it was before we went to the gig, and I just came up with this little riff.
Okay.
It didn't really develop into a song for obviously 2 years beyond, but that was kind of, other than Get Spooky, which was when I was 17. I tend to have like a box full of unfinished songs that could come alive at any moment when the inspiration
whenever you
strikes.
Want to invoke them.
Yeah.
Is it because sometimes it's not even the right time for a song to emerge?
Yeah.
And then if you, like what you said with Get Spooky, it needs some living of life, some experience to fully present itself in its form. I like that.
How about this one? Did you face any challenges or obstacles during the creation of the album, and how did you overcome them?
I think for me personally, always I don't like it's becoming less and less, but I always have a bit of a nervousness going into the studio. But again, that's more my inner self and stories that will just say, "Oh, you're doing it good enough." Is it? And again, perfectionism. So I feel in general I've been in a long process of trying to let go of that perfectionism and just do it. Just do it. Just create it. Just sing it. Just trust yourself. And I think also to go back to the curtain, that has opened up my voice in many beautiful ways. And I think I've grown a lot more confident in using my voice and expressing myself and knowing that I can approach it differently in its use. So yeah, I think that that was a personal one.
Yeah.
And for you?
Well, when I was reflecting on this question, I actually loved making the album. I loved the moment of creating it, and I found such a nice creative flow where I just immersed myself wholly into it, and it was sort of the escape from any other kind of concerns of, the fact that we had no income or things coming in, and we were just like in this strange moment post-pandemic, well, in the midst of the pandemic, just the creation of the record was like the release and the escape, and just immersing myself into it and challenging myself as a producer.
Because it's the first record you entirely produced by yourself.
Yeah.
And you had a great collaboration with Adam. Like, it's been such a joy working with him, and he's allowed us the space to approach it in how we wanted to approach it, and it felt really open and like good flowing.
Yeah, completely.
And I really appreciate that.
Ideal relationship and circumstance there. So the obstacles all started for me in a way in 2022. Of when we actually started trying to work out how we were releasing the record. And it's stuff, again, it's like, let go of your stories. I don't feel like I need to tell the stories, but there are certain things that were just like really threw me off my flow and just sent me into a lot of sense of doubt and just kind of really wondering what we were doing and how we were doing it. And I mean, the one thing that probably was like the biggest blow, that in reflection I maybe should have been a bit more anchored, but we made this live film, we invested, we were going to get funding. It was not funny. It was quite funny in retrospect. Get funding for it, but then that didn't happen. And then I was like, I really want to make this happen. We've all got it organized. I'm going to put our own money into it, which was quite a lot of money.
A big investment.
And then the last 3 songs of the film, for some act of the gods, the audio corrupted, and we lost the audio of basically what was an 8th song live set. We lost the last 3, and it was sort of like the climax. For me, it was like the best moments. It was, performances of Get Spooky, Dark Days, Black Sun Rising, and we had a string quartet. In general, it was like a big investment. And losing that, I was just like, I don't know, I took it very, not personally as like an attack on me, but just like, I think I had a sense of, this is how I'd say it destabilized me, really. It was like I had a sense of like, yes, we're on the right path. Things are getting better. We're working it out. We're going in the right direction. I believe we're going to achieve this. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to make our investment in it, and it's all going to be worth it. It's all going to kind of come into this beautiful thing. And then when there was like a sequence of things of that not happening, that losing that audio, then the crypto
dumped.
Yeah, the crypto industry, like, boom. And so,
and we're like, oh.
And then we just had like conflicts with people, and people just like sort of betraying trust and things like this. And suddenly after a few months, I was just like, I'd completely lost that momentum by the summer of 2022.
I think like we were not the only one that were been put on hold. This was a collective energy, because I spoke to many people that have experienced similar things, and was like, okay, wait a minute, we are not supposed to put this out at this moment in time. How can we look at all these things that are presenting themselves and are there lessons present?
Of
What
course,
is it showing?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I completely accept that, and I'm not saying it's like some, like, you know, my personal burden. But anyway, the experience of it was like it really knocked the wind out of my sails.
yeah.
And, you know, in hindsight, also when the questions about releasing in a quite a non-traditional approach with the music and not working with PR and so on and so forth, in hindsight, at that moment, probably would have been a moment of trying to either find a distributor or a label to help us with the release of the record, because we'd sort of been knocked back-footed on it, and we no longer had that much money to invest into the release and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that's just been present with me this week, so
But
I just
for
want to say it. But let me just finish just to say. But nonetheless, we stuck to our guns and our vision of what we were going to create. And though suddenly I was racked with doubt, like before that I was like, yes, we're doing it. And then suddenly I was like, yeah, we're doing it, I guess. Like, really, we're doing it. And, you know, again, it's like the part of me that seeks safety and security and just like, I don't know, having support structures around. But I think the sort of reckless freedom that we've had in releasing it in the way we have, you know, has brought with it a lot of life lessons, which I'd say, just to finalize this thought, sorry, thought you were going to say something. If you hold the general kind of worldview picture that you incarnate into life to experience, overcome challenges and take lessons and just deepen and grow through it. You know, this is what this path has, and I don't know what the next steps are going to look like now. It's completely like, I have no idea what's going to happen next.
Flowing.
But yeah, in that way, I just do feel quite liberated, like a lightness. And it's like, whatever we do, I'm just going to be present with full heart in it. And even if it's, you know, something completely different, then so be it.
I always see that moment as like the tower card in the tarot. Sometimes we do need a bit of a tower card where everything just starts shaking. And like, whoa, I had a plan. And God laughs at you and says, yeah, you had a plan and now it's gone. And I knew by just reflecting and looking at things, like, we need to solidify the structure of this before we can fully move forward. So it's all set to go so we can release. And step by step, we worked out what needed to be done and how to move forward. And I think for me personally, I also had, like, I was doing a sound therapy study. So I was fully immersed in that and had a lot of tools that were very useful throughout the process. But
useful for your own kind of
just processing. Dealing with certain moments and processing with things that present themselves. And sometimes, you know, when you go through personal changes, and I in the last 2 to 3 years have experienced quite like a significant shift in my understanding around certain things. And it's almost like, okay, you say you have this, let's test it. And you get an experience, or a person shows up or whatever, to see if you live up to what you say you believe in.
But that's what I really had trouble with, because I remember saying to John also before going into the live film, I was like, we're just going to do it. I believe it's going to happen, and I feel like I'm at a level of development now where I can, you know, I can ride any wave that comes at me. I can, you know, I have a sense of self, a sense of purpose. I know what's going on. And then actually I felt like so completely, after a few months, I just had this moment where it's like, man, I've completely fallen off the horse here. Like, I've entirely lost what it was. And then it sort of felt like, oh, so I'm at square one again.
You get a bit of humble cake.
Humble pie.
Humble pie.
Well, yeah, I mean, what was this line where it's like, I can't remember what it is, but you don't look at the heavens until you're being completely knocked down to your knees, or whatever it may be, on your back.
Yeah.
There's a song in it, no doubt.
So, yeah, there were a lot of things we started to take responsibility and kind of like a strengthening, an inner strengthening. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been like, I am so great. Like, I wouldn't have wanted to wish it for any other way, because I'm just grateful for everything that presented itself, because I feel I've learned so much. And I'm still learning so much.
Well, we're still in the midst of the process.
Yeah.
Like I said yesterday when we chatted.
You go first.
Well,
now, I have a nice quote which I'm going to say in a minute that relates to all of this.
Well, I just finish on that thought then. Yesterday as we were walking back from down the hill at sunset, and we'd been filming, and I was just like, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, this is perfect. And all the feelings of like lack and scarcity that I've been like present with, it's just like I let, in the letting go, you just sort of start feeling this pulse of energy, life force, where you just, I don't know, you feel a bit like hilarious. I always think of that, my favorite Kanye song, where it's just like, I just don't care anymore, I feel kind of free. And just like the childishness, like, I just don't give a fuck, man. I'm just gonna live and love.
That's what it's about. We've been taking everything way too serious.
Live, love, laugh.
And on that note, let me introduce the archetype I wanted to talk about. I had a little piece of text, and I think it is perfect to just kind of like experience. So as a kind of like an invocation, I could tell you this. Boom, 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 boom. Embodying the adventurous, spontaneous innocence of the fool on a daily basis. That is my intention. Embracing a leap of faith into the unknown with a deep trust in the self and universe. I am choosing freedom. I am choosing liberation, self-expression, and authenticity. I see unlimited potential and infinite possibilities, and life is a blank canvas upon which one can create their own reality, free from any past expectations. Because life, really, is wisdom through experience. And I've gained so much wisdom the last 6 months in this whole journey around the album process, learning from experiences and mistakes, but seeing that even the setbacks can be valuable lessons on the creative path of self-discovery. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Yeah, well, this also just made me think of the fool, but also like the innocence of a child.
Yes.
And just being like, it's okay, I love it. You know, like it's I'm just here doing it, and I appreciate, like, there's maybe, I don't know how self-reflective a child is in the sense of gratitude, because I know that's something in recent years that I've really like tried to cultivate as a practice of gratitude, because for so much in life you just take it for granted,
counting the blessings,
or you can just take it for granted.
Yes.
And yeah, just the gratitude to be here doing it, living this life. And well, yeah, you know, it's like, it's okay. I think again on that self-persecution, I always had this sense of like, I'm doing things wrong, like I'm going wrong, it's all going wrong. And then it's like, what is wrong? Like, what is wrong? So yeah, I like this, the Holy Fool, embodying the Holy Fool. I did actually, with the return visual, the treatment that I had made initially.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Was all around the Fool, and this just made me think because of this question. I love your music videos. Will you be making any more for this album?
Yeah.
In response to this question, there's like two thoughts.
One
is yes, we're going to keep making visuals, but the other one is we no longer have budget that we're putting into them, so we're just making them in a quite improvised manner. Again, like I had ideas, and as I said, I had this whole treatment for a really great music video for The Return, which I feel like is probably the biggest single on the album, pop single. For me, it's the closest to a pop song I've ever wrote. But anyway, it's like there's no money to make a visual, so we just went out at sunset with the GoPro, and we shot some stuff, and we'll make a visual. And again, it's just like that letting go of like perfectionist, artistic
a
sense of like.
spontaneous action. I think it's another quality just to really embrace, and instead of like, oh, I should do things like this, I am doing this new kind of practice, and I'm asking myself, what can I do today that brings me most joy? Because when you do something that you really enjoy, and it's the same when you're in a creative process when you just are so immersed into something, the energy that comes from you is it's like light, it's uplifting, and it's beautiful, and that's what you want to bathe yourself in.
Yeah. Because we both have a real love of the craft of filmmaking and like great cinematography, and I don't know, like I aspire to make really beautiful, great film, and I feel like the trailer that we made, or the stuff we shot there, the shadow boxing video, sort of like reflects that sort of what do you say, like high level taste and talent or whatever. But at the other side, it's just like, who cares, you know, like people experimental filmmakers that just work with like a BlackBerry and just shoot. I don't know why I said BlackBerry. Well, I used to have a BlackBerry, and I loved the quality of the footage on it always. But anyway, the point being, just you just make it, and it's just an expression, and that's all it needs to be. It doesn't, again, it's like that grandiosity, and this is a big part for me, is like getting over myself, basically, like just being like, just do and create and have fun, and don't be like, oh, but I'm making something so magnificent, somebody give me a little gold star. That's basically
That's
all
what
I
you
ever
want,
want.
don't
It's just
you?
like a sheriff
Guys,
star.
can anyone send Ellery a little gold
Please,
star?
in the post.
No, I totally agree with you, and this is where I see how like La International, the creative studio, will evolve itself. We have so many ideas for like visuals, films, story writing, poetry, like, and it's gonna hold that as an umbrella. And music is just one of our expressions, but I feel we have so much more to offer. And I'm really excited about that. And I start to see ourselves more and more as creators in that sense, not just as a label. Because a label is like, of course you are a musician, but that's just one of the many things you are. Because it's hard. Yeah,
Yeah. I know what you're saying, and I think it's just also being like present to that DIY energy, just in the sense of like the amount of money that we invested in making videos and whatever. It's like, but you could just shoot it on your phone and
true. And I think also, I know we're gonna go through a bit of a crazy creative shift with the sense of like how tools are with AI are being kind of like sped up in the process of creation. We almost move more to a way of being where there is a thought, and we put the thought into the program or tool, and something comes out. And I do not mean this is how you fully should create, but I see them as tools, because there's a beauty within when you have a thought about something, and there's an image that forms itself into your own being, because that's very highly personal to you. But I do believe those two can meet. But this is a whole topic.
I'd
save for
we
something
should
else.
Look and try finding someone who's like engaged with the AI from a creative level, and have a conversation with them, because I'd be interested to. I have a bunch of feelings around it that maybe we'll save.
But let's save that one. What is, just to go back to the album, what's your favorite song? Do you have a favorite? Because it's like asking what's your favorite child. It's a bit of a strange question.
Everyone always actually has a favorite child as well, don't they?
I do think so, yeah.
Well, I keep coming back to Keepers of the Flame, because
I wanted to say that.
Look at us.
So aligned.
We should go on a date
tell me
or something.
why.
There's just like a joyful lightness to it. I really like the tone of our voices and the way your voice harmonizes with mine.
Yeah.
I like the strangeness of the drums. I like how funny it was. This is a fun story. I don't want. It's no diss on Ben, but we hired a conga, And I had this sort of, because we've been playing like with the curtain with Damien playing the tabla, and it's like these crazy. And then I know it's just like the rhythm of the song is quite slow and whatever, but I was just laughing so much because I was trying to like get Ben to be groovy, and it was so like bob, 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 and I was like laughing. Anyway,
it was beautiful.
You had to be there.
Ben
it
has been
funny.
amazing as well on this.
Shouts out Ben Kelly.
Shout outs to Ben Kelly for providing luscious, wonderful, beautiful drums on this record.
And just support and energy and optimism, and
he's been
just
with
like
us
joyfulness.
for a long time. I'm
very much appreciate Ben
grateful
Kelly.
for his soul. But yeah, Keepers of the Flame for me is almost like it's this kind of like it's hidden. Like it's there.
I think
but
it's a song that most people forget about or like
but
overlook.
for me, when I listen to it, I don't know, the quality just has like, oof, there's like, you would see a floor of mud and there'd be a tiny shimmer in there. And that's like, well, take it out. And that's
the floor of mud that is the rest of the record.
No, not like that.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and is, I don't know, it's a sweet little song.
A sweet little song.
I love that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's Get Spooky, obviously. I'm very proud to have it finished after over a decade of it sitting around waiting for its moment. Lullaby, I think, has got, again, very beautiful interplay between our voices. There was a question from Matt that I wanted to just say, because I like, he was saying about just the interplay between our two voices. And there's like the intentional parts. So I just say, as from like my songwriting perspective, sometimes I really use this sense of dialogue between me and Ebony, that I am the sort of the fool character that I am, and then Ebony's voice in the lyric and the way that I write it reflects sort of like a higher soul perspective that is sort of like softening or mirroring back to me in a more beautiful way. So that's it, for instance, in Get Spooky, where I say my whole like little story of woe, and then you go, well, what did you expect when you turn from your true self? That it's like has that dialogue, which, you know, is in some ways the beauty of our relationship as well. I think you mirror back to me the higher aspects of myself, or encourage them. So that's something I would say. What about you?
I wanted to actually ask if, like, so when you write, do you often clearly know, like, this part is for Ebony or this part is from you? Or sometimes within the kind of like way of trying, those roles, those like lyrics shift because it sounds more better when me or you sing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the way we talked about this record coming in much more of an organic flow and singing songs together in the space, and you just find what works. I remember I listened to it the other day, but the first version of Dark Days I made, and I tried singing on it, and it just sounded like weird, like new metal or something. And then Ebony singing it just brings a whole different quality.
I guess that's often when like a song can have a bit more of a heavier instrumentality, and then to have a more feminine approach added to it then adds this ethereal quality with it. And it's interesting how that works differently, because sometimes I try singing it and I really like it. I know it has to be for Ellery because it just doesn't work. But it's always a kind of like we're trying to work out the piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I remember on there were some bits on, it's the second verse on Winter's Truth, I remember, that I really liked the flow and the melody, and I was quite proud of it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to sound so cool singing this. Like, I was like, had this whole thing about this is my
this is my moment.
And then you sung it, and I was like, oh, that just sounds so much better. And I remember having a bit of like not jealousy, but being like, oh, yeah, okay. That's how it will be. All right, there's some funny little questions at the end.
Yeah, let's do them.
Through.
Let's do them.
So, if you could be a fictional character from any movie, TV series, so on, who would it be and why?
I would be Dolores from Westworld. Again, maybe going back to this strange thing of personal myth unfolding, but by having watched all those episodes, I have felt such a strong connection to the whole subject and topic matter that's been presented within that around consciousness and her becoming awake and aware.
Breaking out the loop.
But then also more and more certain experiences I have, there seem to be like symbolic connections presented within the show, and I feel I'm working out something personally, and that's why I feel that strong connection.
To take control of reality through your
Hell yeah.
creation of stories.
Co-creator.
Yeah, which season particularly? I kind of see you as season 2 of the gun belt.
Yeah, definitely season 2. Season 1 was more kind of like introducing everything.
Well, she only breaks
kind of
out
like,
of the loop.
Season
Plot
2.
spoiler.
And you?
Well, just on that, when we were making the album artwork and we came up with this maze idea, we had just finished watching season
Westworld.
4 of it. Was it coming out whilst we were making the record?
3 or 4, I can't remember.
The last season, basically. Anyway, and we were like, half like, oh no, we can't do the maze. It's just, it's going to be too Westworld. People are just going to think we're like Westworld stands and everything we do is Westworld pastiche, which I think it would be nice if it was more Westworld.
Well, let's
anyway, let's my character, after thinking about this long and hard, I have 2 things to say. So when I was younger, like end of Woo Life, beginning of Lost Under Heaven, I think I always in my mind idealized being someone like Tyler Durden from Fight Club, the one that Brad Pitt plays.
Oh yeah.
Like some kind of like badass anarchist outside of society.
Yeah.
But I came to realize that this was not me in the slightest. And a character I really resonated with in recent times is Ginko-san from Mushishi, the Japanese anime. And I'd love to just wander around tranquil forests, helping people with their spiritual issues.
I think you also really resonate with another character who's very similar but a bit more mischievous. Snufkin.
Yeah, Snufkin. So you know, going through all this inner work, and I realized like the Ellery Roberts story is from Tyler Durden to Snufkin. That's been my journey
of softening,
and just like, you know, just connecting with the great green world out there and not caring about the edifice of modernity too much. Anyway, so here's another one. If you could invite any 3 people, living or deceased, to a dinner party, who would they be and why?
I'm going to answer honestly because I want to have a weird table. Because, you know, people always be like, I want Kurt Cobain, da-da-da, and da-da-da. But I kind of, me personally, would love to be at a table where everything would just be kind of like contradicting and a bit like fiery and feisty and kind of like, wow.
Dinner pie.
No, it would be... So, who I think it's going to be weird. This is just a momentarily kind of like thing that comes up. I would love to have maybe perhaps, let's say, okay, I'm going to go Sri Aurobindo, Ted Kaczynski, and Camille Paglia. Because, I mean,
they probably would get along okay, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
It wouldn't be too...
but who could I add to that where it would be
like Andrew Tate or somebody?
Yeah, he would be welcome on my table too. The thing is, everyone is welcome around my table. I just want to hear everyone's story. Because there's so much perspective and wisdom and challenges to see what comes up. So yeah, that's just my take for the moment. And you?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, I should have considered it a bit more when we got the question.
What's the first thing that comes up?
Well, the first thing that came up is kind of like profound, but also a bit boring. I was trying to think of something more funny, but
you will have a really funny table.
That'd be so
much fun too.
Well, yeah, exactly. So Yeah, so should I say like the profound, like, yeah, cool, bro, one, or try and come up with something funny? I'd say the profound one because it's the only one in my head currently.
Okay, go.
So Tolstoy,
Yeah.
Gandhi,
Yeah.
and I forget his name, but he was like a friend of Martin Luther King or an advisor to Martin Luther King. But they all shared this. There was like this lineage of thought around soul force. I think it was Satchitananda in Gandhi. Anyway, I'd like to be involved with a discussion around that and the sort of mutual inspiration of kind of that coming forth within humanity that rises against oppression and overcomes. So that's my like, cool story, bro.
Cool.
Answer to that question. I'll try and find something more sensational for next life.
Are we gonna finish it with this?
Oh yeah,
question?
this one. I like this question
Okay.
because it made me think of, like
ask
those ones where it's like Kylie Jenner and Travis Scott, and they don't know anything about each other. It's like, what's my favorite breakfast?
If you could describe each other in 3 words, what would they be? Without 3 words, whatever comes up right now.
Well, what comes up is not 3 words because it's what you said earlier. So I shouldn't say it. The still waters runs deep. That's too easy. Okay, with Ebony Horn, I would characterize you as wise, sincere, and mischievous.
I like it. Those are only 3 of my qualities.
Well, yeah, I'm offering 3 because that was the question.
And with you, which is how I experience you, I would say very inspirational, poetic, and you have a certain kind of like headstrongness to you, but I really admire that. It's a good quality. Like you there's a strong perseverance.
Stubborn
and
as a
grounded.
goat.
Yes, it's probably all those Capricorn placements. But I'm very grateful for it because we balance each other out so beautifully because you keep me grounded. If I've learned a lot from that, and this is probably something we can save for another episode where we talk about this. I
think we should just do it more like
the
Kylie Jenner and Thingy.
Yeah, what?
Where they've got like a pink backdrop, and then they're like, "What breakfast do you eat in the morning?"
So
and
what's Ellery's
like,
favorite breakfast in the morning? Fruity Loops?
What color are my eyes? Fruity Loops. All right, well, we've got to the end of the questions. If anyone ever has another question they want to ask us,
send it in, and
maybe we'll do it more frequently, like a monthly AMA. Ask me anything.
Just want to say thank you to ourselves for the creation of this record.
And shouts out to all the patrons.
Yes.
If we were like...
all the names are on the back.
This is actually Adam Gorman's record that I haven't given to him yet. It's signed to him.
That's fine. Yeah, we have all the names of our patrons on the back.
If we were like
a
Let's Talk Religion guy, we could read them all off.
Yes.
For an hour.
We'll put them in the screen as well as like the final title. But yeah, thank you for listening. And if you love what we do, if you love our work, if you want to support us, we have a Patreon. I will put the link in the description box. And if you want to keep up to date with any kind of like, and if you want to stay up to date with any other episodes that will come through, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment in the description box. No, not in the comment section.
Yes, this is professional.
I have to step over my cringiness and talking like this, so I'm just embracing the
comment, subscribe.
Yes, no.
Or preferably buy records, and
it's available on our Bandcamp.
There's a whole nother thing that we didn't talk about actually, but that we've not put the record on mainstream streaming platforms. So let's...
Okay.
Sorry, guys. I hope you're still with us. I just wanted to say one thing about this. That I've really been trying to get into the state of mind where I see somebody, I appreciate their work, and I support them in whatever way it would be. So either I subscribe to their Patreon, send them some money on like a PayPal, or buy their record, buy their film, buy their art. You know, we have limited funds. I'd like to become a patron of the arts much more. So, but I just feel like culture lives in such a vapid and passive way so often, where it's just like, I like it. And it's like, well, if you really like it, encourage them to keep on doing it.
Do consider the people, you can support the people that create.
And the amount of like work and sort of yourself that you put into a creation of art. Yeah, it's just like we live in an abundant world, and that abundance should flow around. So that said, support our work if you like it. If you don't like it, how have you got to this point in a podcast?
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Episode 4.
Much love.
Much love. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Skirt.